Hello, this is Wes Bridle, and this is another Kingdom Calling Economic Update video. Again, this is the third in a series of three I'm doing this week, and this is all about the stuff that's been going on in the last couple of weeks. All of these videos are follow-ups to the Coming Storm video we did in November 2009. There's a free link to go watch that. It's an hour-and-a-half video, and it will really give you a big picture of what's been going on. A lot of what I'm talking about we predicted back in November. These things are coming to pass, but the really big changes that are going to come haven't really happened yet, and there's still time for you and your family to prepare, but we are actually, there's a countdown. We're getting closer here. So please watch that video if you haven't. This is just what's been going on the last couple weeks, and I'm just going to talk about economic things within our own country that are happening. First is just states, United States are in desperation. Just a few pictures of this. I think this is from the Casey's Daily Dispatch. California added a $26 penalty assessment for every $10 of traffic fines. Is that outrageous? They're so desperate for money. On top of the normal fines, they added a 260% surcharge. Virginia had put a ticket campaign out called Operation Air, Land, and Sea, and they specifically said they're trying to bridge the $2.2 billion budget shortfall, and they issued 7,000 tickets in 3 days. Indianapolis is now fining people who unsuccessfully fight traffic tickets. They don't want anyone messing with their money supply, and so they're now attacking you. None of these things are really constitutional. The government is not supposed to be coming after the people this way, and yet this is going on. So it just gives you an idea of the desperation of the states right now. Warren Buffett says that the U.S. won't be able to stiff-arm states when they bail out corporations. This report, and everything I put out, I put out on my Twitter feed at Wes Bridle, so you can see all the articles that I'm reading to come up with these updates. But basically the article was saying that Warren Buffett has dropped investments in municipal bonds, and because he sees there's a lot of weakness in municipalities, in states. But at the same time, he made this statement that he doesn't see how the U.S. government is going to stiff arm and not bail out states when they've bailed out corporations. You know, they shouldn't be bailing out anybody, but you could see how a state could say, wait a minute, you're willing to bail out General Motors and you're willing to bail out these banks, but you won't bail out California? And so that's the situation we're in. Again, we talked about this back in November, that this is going to happen. We're getting a lot closer. These states are getting to the point where they just have nowhere to turn, but the U.S. government bailing them out or them going broke. And let's see, this is incredible. 61% of Illinois teachers' pensions are in derivatives, credit default swaps, and just ultra high risk things like this. This is the stuff that was a big part of the financial crisis in 2008 that brought AIG down. These really risky derivatives. This is not the sort of thing you think of being in a teacher's pension, and yet 61% of the Illinois teachers' retirement system money is in this sort of thing. This is not going to end well. And of course, this is a report of something we've seen. How many more of them out there are just like this, but it's not being reported. This is very, very scary stuff. If you have a pension, I really hope that you're not planning on that to support you, because there's a lot of signs that that's just not going to happen. Unemployment is higher than expected, 427,000 new filings in this last weekly report. And again, these are all things that we talked about. It surprised people for some reason, but these things have been easy to see coming for a long time. The banks and real estate. Banks and real estate are two of the major things in our economy, and they're both heavily interrelated and integrated with each other, and they're both having big problems. You remember the story that we have banks that are too big to fail, and we also talked about what a problem this was a couple of years ago. Well, the four biggest banks now have assets much larger than they did a couple of years ago when we said it was a problem. Back in December of 2007, they had $4.95 trillion in assets, these four banks. Now they have $7.7 trillion, so far bigger. And that is double the combined assets of the next 46 biggest banks. Those banks are way too big for our economy, and yet our government, instead of letting failing banks go under and letting strong banks compete and raise up, we've given money, bailed out more money, so that these four banks, our economy is more and more dependent on them and more capable of being hurt by them. this financial reform bill, and I think I'll be talking about this more in the next, because more and more information is coming out about this financial reform. But it's going to allow the Fed to control interchange rates, and this is, I think it's all still under debate. But if they do this, I read a report that the small banks are simply not going to be able to afford the interchange rate that they're probably going to put out, and so your use of debit cards, if you use a smaller bank, that might go away. It might be that only the big banks can afford that, or they're going to have to assess massive fees to do that. I've also heard about big banks going to need to add new fees and drop free checking. Specifically, Bank of America was mentioned because of the new regulation red tape that they would have to do. Now, a lot of people think that, oh, these big banks, they don't like this. Well, it's not such a bad thing for them, because it makes competition in that area more and more difficult to get into. Because of all the red tape, new banks can't join into that, and so it puts a moat around the big established banks. Mortgage applications are down 40%. Home purchases down 34% in May over last May. Well, last May was down 20%. These numbers are extremely low. Shiller's Housing Price Index showed that despite the 30% drop we've seen in real estate prices, houses are still more expensive than they have been for the last 120 years. Not counting these couple years before us, but counting compared to all the time before that, more expensive than the last 120 years. So we have a lot further for real estate to drop before we hit equilibrium there. Deterioration in the credit markets is, again, like the before the 2008 crash. If you look at what's happening with spreads between different rates of different interchange and interbank rates that they're charging, it's starting to look like what it looked like right before the 2008 crash. And lastly, 1 in every 400 homes received a foreclosure notice in May. That blew me away. That is a scary stat. That doesn't mean every one of them will necessarily foreclose, but 1 in 400 homes received a notice. Thank you for watching this. Again, if you haven't seen The Coming Storm, there's a link to watch it for free. I highly recommend you do that. And thank you for watching. God bless you.